When 9/11 happened, I was starting my acting career in New York. Not such great timing, I know. But luckily, I was part of a community of Arab actors and comedians that was a source of solidarity when there was a lot of pushback against Arabs. When we all performed together in the first New York Arab American Comedy Festival, we found solace in the comedy. It allowed us all to address our fears and frustrations, but also to diffuse tension and, we hoped, show who we really are. Among us, one comedian stood out, Maysoon Zayid. It wasn't because of her disability. She has cerebral palsy. It was her boldness, her wit, and her unapologetic spirit. It's no surprise that Maysoon not only excelled in stand-up comedy, but also emerged as a powerful disability advocate and storyteller. Maysoon has been a trailblazer in the Palestinian entertainment industry for over 2 decades, and she pioneered the art of stand-up comedy in Arabic. She has performed to sold-out audiences worldwide and had the most viewed TED Talk of 2014. Now, I haven't seen Maysoon since we met in Beirut around 2004, so I was delighted when she accepted my invitation to Tarwida. This episode was recorded on the 21st of December, 2024. I'm your host, Hafaf Shawabibi, and you're listening to Tarwida. Hala bi Maysoon.
Hala bi Afaf.
It's so good to have you with us.
It's really actually good. And we should say, thank God I'm here because I'm in Palestine and actually getting anywhere alive is a huge challenge. Getting anywhere on time is cartoonishly not impossible. So I am here, Ya Afaf, just for you. And,
yay!
And Tarwida, which I'm probably saying wrong.
La, you're saying it just fine. Tarwida is correct. So, Maysoon, you are in Palestine right now. You're in Bethlehem, and you spend part of your time, part of the year here, right? You come and go.
Yeah, so I'm bicontinental. There are people in America who are bicoastal, and they're like New York, LA. I'm Jersey, Jerusalem, New Jersey and Jerusalem, because I spend most of my life here. I would live in Palestine if I was allowed to. I'm actually not allowed to live in Palestine. Both of my parents are Palestinians. I was married for 10 years to a Palestinian, but they haven't given me a Palestinian ID. They won't give me an ID. And so I'm only allowed to stay here 3 months a year. Otherwise, I would live permanently. So right now I'm splitting time between the United States and Palestine, but very soon, like right after Ramadan, I'm going to become Jordan, Palestine. I'm leaving the United States.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be like a really big change for you.
It's unbelievable. I never, ever in my life thought I would leave the United States, ever. But it's become extraordinarily unlivable for me as a woman, as a disabled woman, and most specifically as a Palestinian woman facing just unbelievable discrimination.
Yeah, I can imagine. And actually, that's something that we're going to dive deep into about what's happening with you and Palestinian artists in the US. But I wanted to just, for our listeners who I'm sure most people are familiar with you and your work, but just give us a little bit of, getting into comedy. Just let's look back about when Maysoon started comedy. What made you want to be a comedian?
I'm gonna give you like the 90-second soundbite.
Yeah.
So the doctor who delivered me when I was born in New Jersey was drunk, and I lost oxygen, and I developed a disability called cerebral palsy, which is basically brain damage in babies. And it caused me a shake, And for other children are wheelchair users, some are nonverbal. My parents were new immigrants and they couldn't afford physical therapy. So they sent me to dance class. And I got on stage and I was getting these standing ovations. And I was like, I am a superstar. I must go to Hollywood. What I didn't know was that I was the inspirational disabled kid because there was no internet. And I was a drama queen and I studied theater. But Hollywood and media in America shun disabilities. So I couldn't get a break. Where I saw people who looked like me was stand-up comedy, specifically a comedian named Richard Pryor, who was a Black comedian, very edgy, very controversial. But later in life, he was a wheelchair user and he had MS. So he shook all the time. And there were other odd people, whether they were heavier than Hollywood standards, whether they, were ethnic. Comedy was where diversity was able to move around. I always say we're the ugly people. We're the people that were too ugly for television, whether it's because we're disabled or we're ethnic or whatever the non-Barbie standard is. So I went to a comedy class in New York City. And at my third open mic, I met Dean Obeidallah, who's from Betir, which is he's also Sicilian, but right next to Bethlehem. And I saw him and I was like, hey, you're Arab. And I hadn't seen any other Arabs. We connected. 9 months later, 9/11 happened. Dean reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to do something with me to combat the negative images of Arabs in media? And I was like, nobody's going to come to this show. And then Arab comedy was born. The New York Arab American Comedy Festival was born. And we met, Nebras. We did this first comedy festival that was groundbreaking. And within 7 years of starting the festival, we were touring with Live Nation. That Live Nation tour led to me doing a TED Talk, which I didn't know was important. And I was really bummed because they didn't pay me. When that talk went viral, it changed the course of my art and my career because I became a disability advocate. I had never been a disability advocate. I was an advocate for Palestinian equality, for anti-discrimination against Muslims, but I didn't realize the state of disabled people in this world until I did the TED Talk. However, I just want to say, I love being a comedian. But living in the United States, it is impossible to survive as a disabled person unless you are literally a millionaire. So I became a Renaissance woman. I'm a comedian. I teach at universities. I've taught at Princeton. I'm on my way to teach at NYU. I do a web series. I have a comic book. I have an audio memoir that was a bestseller. I have a new, panel show that I'm doing. So as a comedian, I am also a jack of all trades. And that is another reason I want to relocate to the Middle East, because for what I pay to go to the gym in America, I could pay for a driver, a nutritionist, and a personal trainer in Jordan.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I want to go back to when you started as a comedian. You've mentioned that you would listen to your aunts in Palestine telling stories, and tell me more about that.
So a lot of people wonder where my style of comedy came from. So when you watch my stand-up comedy, I'm a storyteller. And I'm also someone who does something called bait and switch, where you think it's going to end one way and it goes another way. And what I say is, my parents sent me every summer to live in Palestine with my aunties and my grandmothers, Allah yarhamhim.
And where is that? Which part of Palestine?
So my village is called Deir Dibwan, and we are next to Ramallah. But we're a very special village because we're just 3 families. And most of us went to America in the 30s. So my mom was born an American citizen in Dibwan because her dad went to Utah in 1936 because there was an exchange program with the Mormons. It's a whole thing.
And so you would go back every summer and spend time with your aunties.
So I would go back every summer And there was no internet. There was no TV. There was no cell phones. So we had nothing to do. And my aunties would sit around in a circle and they would do tatriz, which is traditional Palestinian cross stitch. And everyone had a role. So one of them would do like the flowers, the other would do the seams, the other would do the collar. And my job was to pull the white threads of the netting that they used as their mat. And it was such a genius idea because I'm sitting there with cerebral palsy with almost no coordination and they're getting me to exercise. And I don't know I'm exercising.
Wow.
I'm just like working like they are. And they're gossiping. They are just gossiping, right? But they're not gossiping in the old, like in the mean-spirited way that like women are like that, B-I-T. No, their gossip would be things like, oh, did you see Afaf got married? And no matter how hard that makeup artist tried, her nose still looked huge. And they wouldn't even be making fun of her. It would be like an observation that like, you know, but also if someone pissed them off, they were amazing. Like I always say, I miss the curses that they used to use because like curses are so vile and misogynistic. My aunties had the best curses and they used to crack me up. They would say like, which means I hope someone stabs and pops you. Or if I tripped at the door, they would say, which means I hope you break in half. Or like if I did something really silly, they would say, which literally means I hope your grave gets opened in front of you. And like, the thing I would have done is like steal a piece of Laffy Taffy. You know what I mean? It wasn't something that the death penalty should have been. So just listening to them and listening to the way they told stories and the men, my dad was hysterically funny. So he would come home and talk about his day with no intention whatsoever of being funny. And he would be laugh out loud funny. My mother is straight edge, strict, chief of lab at a hospital, raised by nuns in Palestine because schools ended at 6th grade and did when she was growing up. So my grandparents sent her to live with the nuns because the nuns educated girls through high school. So I was raised, I always say, a teddy bear and a tyrant. And without both of them, I wouldn't have been able to survive a day in Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean, I saw you in an interview. You mentioned that your mom, that you mentioned your dad a lot, but that you sometimes forget to mention the role your mom played. Like, she's brutally honest with you. You'll ask her, how did I do on this show? And she'll say like, your hair was
was terrible. It was disastrous.
Yeah.
And like today it's disastrous. And I deserve to be told that because I do.
No, you look great.
No, but I want to be like the Beyonce kind of like, woo, big hair. But like my mom doesn't get enough credit because again, it's like I had two polar opposite parents and my personality is so gregarious that I lean more towards my father. But the imprint that my mother has, like, think about it. This woman got married at 19 by choice. But she got married at 19. She had 4 daughters. One of whom was severely disabled by 26. And then she went back to college and got a master's degree and became chief of lab at a hospital. So like she had a list of chores that we were going to do every weekend. We cleaned the house. We learned to speak Arabic. We learned how to read Quran. She was merciless about school. Like I didn't get to be like, oh, I failed the test because I couldn't write fast enough. She was like, figure it out. And there was no disability accommodations when I was growing up. So my parents fought and sued the school to get me into school. And I always say, if I had been sent to an institution instead of mainstreamed into school, then I would never be sitting here in front of you.
It's amazing how parents really can just set the course of your life, really.
Yeah, but my dad is who gave me the soul and the spirit of not being ashamed of them. You knew me when I was really young, Afaf. And I was never ashamed of the fact that I was disabled.
No.
And the fact that I was disabled was not front and center in anything we did. I was mainstreamed with you all. Yeah. And my dad, he was the one, and also my grandmothers, My dad taught me pride of like, don't be embarrassed. A lot of people told him, hide her. Her sisters won't get married if people see her. And he always had me front and center. He, put my feet on his feet, and he physically taught me how to walk while she was going to college. So like, you have to give her all the credit of going to college. But the reality was my childhood was mainly with him.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. And so you say that it was challenging growing up disabled in the US. And then you ended up going to the Arab world and starting doing stand-up there. How was that different for you? Were there any topics that were off, like taboo that you couldn't talk about?
No, but all of stand-up comedy has changed. So,
Yeah.
2001, the second Intifada started, and I decided that I would come to Palestine. Okay, so everybody go watch this movie. It's totally worth it. There was a movie with Michelle Pfeiffer called Dangerous Minds, and she goes into like the poor, violent area, and she teaches them poetry and Bob Dylan, and they stop shooting each other, and they become like upright citizens. So I decided I was going to come to Palestine, and I was going to teach boys 14 to 18 stand-up comedy so they could use their words as a sword and not rocks. And then I got here, and I was like, oh, they don't have shoes. Like, my focus is completely wrong. And so I shifted my focus to mainstreaming and educating disabled children and supporting charities that did that. So now, for example, the main charity that I support is called Playgrounds for Palestine. And they used to build playgrounds and export olive oil. So I stopped working independently when I saw that it was too big. And instead, I became someone who's a thinker, a promoter, and a voice. And that's who I became. I became that person. So when Dean and I started the New York Arab American Comedy Festival, where we met you, we never made money from it.
I want to talk about that. So this is post 9/11. I was in New York, and I was one of the founding members of the Nebras Arab American Theater Collective. And we did a show in 2002 about what it means to be Arab in America. And our aim was to promote understanding and get people to really see Arabs in a different light. We then met you and Dean, and we helped organize the first New York Arab American Comedy Festival. And our aim was to humanize Arabs and, showcase all these incredible talent. And, but now, Maysoon, fast forward 21 years later, I don't think any of us really are concerned with humanizing anymore, because we've seen what is happening. And we've seen that all of these efforts, I mean, we want to basically elevate our voices for ourselves now, not for the West, I believe.
Such a great schism and fracture and awakening has happened. After the genocide became live streamed, I remember doing my first comedy show a couple of months later with a bunch of women from the comedy festival. And every single time we saw each other that first year, for the first time, we would collapse crying. And I don't cry unless something heavy falls on me. And we would collapse crying because we felt like we had literally spent 20 years trying. We had spent 20 years saying we're going to humanize ourselves. I worked within the U.S. government. I was a delegate for Barack Obama. I helped, create and curate the disability policy for the Antichrist known as Genocide Joe, which is one of my, most regretted moments in our life. Yeah. But we believed that if we worked within the system, whether it was media, government, or education, that we would be able to change the anti-Palestinian hate, the dehumanization of Arabs, the as Edward Said Allah yarhamah said, the Orientalistic view of us, whether it was as Madonna or as a whore, that whole thing. We were trying so hard to save lives, to really save lives. And we knew this year that it had all been for naught, that nothing we had done had worked. But what we also saw was the internet is like Star Wars. There's a light side and there's a dark side. And one of the lightest things we've seen is the indigenous populations around the world have connected. And the first connection was Palestinians were putting debka online. And then all of a sudden Polynesians were like, wait a second, that looks exactly like our traditional dance. And then Zunis from America were like, wait a minute, that's what we do. And all of a sudden, there were all these videos going around of indigenous people stomping the ground.
So beautiful.
They're in the air bombing us, but the land is ours. We are connected to the ground. So I think that there has been an awakening worldwide. The people who are killing us don't know how to care for the land, don't know how to control the people. And the United States realizes the colony in the Middle East is much more lucrative. But what they don't understand is they can't control the population. So when you talk about creating our own systems, worldwide, Palestinians realize we are insanely talented, like ridiculously talented. Music, acting, dancing, fashion, makeup. We do it all, right? So we don't need them anymore. I have a production company. It's called Can Productions. We're a Palestinian-based production company that makes films in Palestine, employing Palestinians and using Palestinian equipment and not farming everything out and not depending on Western journalists and Western filmmakers and Western people to tell us stories. We can create our own content. We can tell our own stories. And to this day, I only tell stories using comedy. My lens is always comedy. So like I'm here in Palestine and every time I call you, it's comedy. I'm like, I don't know, some kid just jumped in my car and like now I'm trying to figure out who his mom is, or like, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't go to the studio in Ramallah because every single checkpoint is closed. And like all of these things are real. Yet I choose to leave New York City and come back home. And while this is your interview, I ask you why. Why?
Because it's the most beautiful place on earth.
It's home. There's no place like home. Everybody's watching Wicked worldwide. Dorothy says there's no place like home. I'd spend 9 months in New Jersey just pining to come back home. I fell in love in Palestine. When you talk about stand-up comedy in Palestine, I came to start this program for kids and people were like, how do you live? How do you have money? How are you a baller? Because until the genocide destroyed my career, I was a baller. And I was like, oh, I'm a comedian. And they were like, you're a what? Because there was no YouTube, there was no TikTok. And I was like, oh, yeah, I tell jokes and make fun of my dad. They're like, what? And then I was like, should I do a show? And they were like, yeah. And so I went to a place called Dar el Nedwa in Bethlehem in 2002. And I did my first stand-up comedy show in Arabic. I didn't know it was revolutionary. But what I did know was it was a way better language for comedy because Arabic can be inherently funny and can also be inherently slicing. Like I could insult you in Arabic and then like 7 years later, you're still like, oh God, I still feel that every once in a while when I see a camel, or a hyena. But also it's the funniest language. It's such a funny language.
Is there a difference in the content and the types of jokes you can say or the words, the language you could use or the images?
Yeah, so not yes and no, right?
Do you have to censor?
No. So yes and no. The only place that I can do stand-up comedy completely freely in the entire world, is Palestine.
Wow.
That doesn't mean that the Palestinian Authority never jailed the guy who did my posters, because they did. But what it means is they have no power and I don't fear them. And I'll probably become president of Palestine at some point. I thought I could say anything in America. I did. I really, really did. I called Joe Biden Genocide Joe once, and I lost over $25,000 of income. I refused to stand by Kamala Harris because she was pro-genocide on a level I've never seen. I wouldn't stand by her. They decimated the whole rest of my career. Other people canceled my work simply because I'm anti-genocide. So when you talk about censorship, I always say I answer to a much, much higher authority, and that's the government that controls every border of Palestine. If I say the wrong thing, I'm an American citizen and they will deny me entry. And if I can't get into my country, I die. Like literally, I die. I can't live without the air, the water, the sea, the sand, the everything. I have to be here. Yeah. It's my soul. And so that's who I'm careful for. And I had people canceling me that have no dog in this fight, that have never heard of Palestine before, simply because the act of being Palestinian is controversial. My lawyer said to me, if you insist on being publicly Palestinian, I have to drop you. I said to her, both my parents are Palestinian. I'm Palestinian. She said, you can be American. People wanted me to DJ Khaled. DJ Khaled is the wealthiest Palestinian performer known. We don't know if there's someone undercover. And he has never said a freaking word about genocide, about
a lot
Palestine.
of people are angry.
But that's what they wanted me to do, Afaf. That's what they wanted me to do. They were like, do you want the academic post? You have to be like DJ Khaled. Do you want to go back on tour with Glennon and Doyle and Brene Brown and Abby Wambach? I toured for years with the biggest motivational speakers in the world who would not...
That's Together Live.
Yeah, Together Live, who would not talk to me, would not say a word to me because they were too busy being motivational and doing the joy, joy, joy Kamala campaign.
Right.
And because I wasn't joyful about genocide joy, they cut me out of everything. And when I reached out to people who I had toured with, wealthy, wealthy, wealthy performers, and said, I can no longer afford my health insurance. I might actually die. I can't afford my insurance anymore. Please put me on stage. I never asked for charity. I just wanted shows, and they wouldn't do it. And the one person who stood up was Dave Matthews, the rock star. And Dave Matthews, he donated his voice to my audiobook that came out in April. When I was completely untouchable. No one would perform with me. No one. The club, Afaf, the club Gotham that we sold out for 17 years, kicked us out. Canceled 5 of our shows. I didn't have a friend in the world. In addition to losing my career, Afaf, I lost all my friends.
I mean, for many of us, it's a choice that we've had to make to disassociate ourselves or stop aligning ourselves with people that, were part of our world, whether they were colleagues or friends or whatever. And sometimes it's an easy choice and sometimes it's a hard one.
Sometimes it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I want you to tell your audience I'm a comedian because I'm not making them laugh right now.
Oh, trust me, they've been laughing. You don't realize it.
Okay, good.
So Maysoon, among the amazing things that you've accomplished is your comic or graphic novel, Shiny Misfits. Tell us about the comic.
Well, first of all, I love comic books. So I'm a comic book fan. And Scholastic approached me and they said, do you want to write a book? And I said, no, I want to write a comic book. So they let me write a graphic novel. And the idea of Shiny Misfits is if you can't fit in, just stand out. And it's the idea that like kids who are weird or poor or not traditionally popular, it doesn't matter. Like It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're the most popular kid. Sometimes having one friend is enough. And if that one friend is your cat, that's cool too. We're trying
Yeah.
to teach them that it's okay. Like, it's okay to be different. And I took
Yeah.
the story of who I felt this girl should be by looking at the way disabled children are exploited and abused and monetized on the internet these days. And here's the best part. My illustrator, Shadia Amin, is also Palestinian. She's a Palestinian
Amazing.
Colombian. And so we're two brown women in a predominantly white male genre. And the book that I wrote is an homage to comic books. The lead character, Bayan, has cerebral palsy, and we took great measures to show the shaking, the crooked of her lip, and have the cerebral palsy apparent in everything, including all of the dreams. So often in the dream world, the superhero world, your disability is healed or turned into a superpower. In her dream world, she was still disabled. She was a princess, but disabled, a witch, but disabled, a superhero, but disabled. So it never went away from her. The reason we did the audiobook the same day is print doesn't ever do the audiobook the same day. It's usually if the book is successful, then you get an audio version. I had to have an audio version the same day because that's how we make it accessible to blind children. The cover of the book is tactile so that people with autism and neurodivergence have something to touch. Shadia Amin designed all the font so that it was dyslexic friendly. We also made sure the book had other disabled people. We have an amputee, we have a wheelchair user, we have a diabetic, because we don't want her to be alone in the world. That's usually you're the only Black person, you're the only Arab, you're the only woman, you're the only disabled person. So we made sure to surround her. But the biggest part about Shiny Misfits is it's a world without borders. And the reason it's a world without borders is because I'm living in the ninth circle of hell because people are fighting over imaginary lines that don't exist literally in the sand. So when I wrote this book, I had no borders, I had no countries. And when we went to do the audio version of the book, we were like, how do we describe people's skin tones, right? Because it's important. We usually say things like Mexican, Arab American, Latino. People are always saying, it's because it's happening to brown people. No, Palestinians are not actually brown. We were the crossroads of the world. So my mom is porcelain white and my dad looks African and I look like Kim Kardashian. So we have like that whole range. And then I was like, let me go to the Native Americans, to the First Nations, and see how did they describe things. And I met a wonderful woman named Michelle Shenandoah, and she said they use elements. And so all of my characters in the book are described as elements. The mom was opal, the dad was desert sand, and the daughter was amber rose.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Right? So the audiobook was like this, just like this love story, you know?
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
And we've been chosen for Read Across America against all odds. Against all odds.
Did it occur to you to maybe do it in Arabic?
Of course. We are working on a translation. Yeah. Arabic.
Because that would be amazing.
Yeah. Arabic and Spanish are coming soon.
Because, when I lived in Ramallah briefly in my third year university, Birzeh in Ramallah, and I was taken aback back then how many people I'd see with disabilities, whether they had an amputation or whatever it was, they were in a wheelchair. But imagine now, I mean, you've mentioned it yourself that what's been happening, it's a mass disabling event. I mean, we're talking a whole generation that's going to grow up without limbs. Multiple
generations. So, what's happening in Palestine is a mass disabling event. A mass disabling event means the amount of disabilities being created is unfathomable. And I say two things, Afaf. I say this is a mass disabling event, but then I also say the future of Palestine is disabled. And we have an incredible, incredible opportunity to build back our nation as an accessibility model for the world. And why do I believe it can happen? Because Qatar built paradise in 12 years. They built it. It's gorgeous. It can be done, right? And I understand that being like hopelessly hopeful and being, the queen of inshallah might upset people right now because we're in the eye of the storm. But I can't stay in the eye of the storm. My entire life, I've spent fighting for equality for Arab and Palestinians, and also fighting for disability rights and fighting to end violence against women. And as you look at this is my moment. This is the moment I was born to meet, to say, hey, I know how to do this. I understand that it's overwhelming, but maybe if we break it down piece by piece by piece and have someone focus on the babies and somebody focus on the girls and somebody, for the love of God, focus on our men, because our men are not disposable. Our men are not disposable. Let's get that weird science geek high school to start printing limbs for me. Like, let's get these affiliations going. Let's look forward to the future and not say, khalas, they're going to kill us all and we're not going to rebuild.
Yeah.
I don't think we can accept that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important what you're doing. And I mean, it's like the stars are aligned because you have all this experience. You've been through it and you can use your talent and your resources to help. Everyone has to help in some way.
Afaf, I don't know if I can help. I really don't know if I can help. I know I have to try. I just feel like existence is resistance. And I'm nonviolent and I'm not moving around money. I'm using my brain. I'm using my comedy. I'm inspiring whoever the heck I can inspire. I'm giving scholarships to women. I'm trying.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm with you on that. It's mind and soul breaking, but we can't let it do that to us. That's the thing. So tell us about your upcoming film.
Inshallah, my big inshallah.
Your inshallah upcoming film that hopefully will start production in May.
Inshallah, ya Rab. So we're in pre-production. We're in pre-production. So my movie is called Majdoulin. And Majdoulin is the Arabic word for Magdalene, as in Mary of Magdalene. And it's a spoof of the American dating show, The Bachelorette. And I play a 40-year-old divorced, super rich social media influencer bachelorette. And she's looking for love in Palestine. And we are replicating the show exactly, except we're placing it in Palestine. The top actors in Palestine committed to be my bachelors. And the host of the TV show is going to be Hind Ayoub, who is an amazing comedic actress from Haifa, who I've been dear friends with for 20 years. We're improvising the entire movie. And the reason that we're improvising the movie is this is Palestine. If they blow up my location tomorrow, I just move to another one. So we need the improv. I even said to my actors, I go, if we get stuck in one room, we can still shoot the movie. What better dating show than being stuck in one room with all of them and having to choose,
Right.
And so the movie is in Arabic and in English because whatever language comes out of our mouth when we improv is what we're going to use. Right. So if I'm in a scene with Sabha, the 80-year-old, mother of one of the bachelors that comes on the show with him, I'm going to be speaking Fallahi Arabic. And if I'm talking, to Walid, who's an Arab American character, then maybe we're going to be flip-flopping back and forth. She has a crying scene. Maybe she cries in English. We don't know. So it will be both languages. And we have a commitment from Watermelon Pictures to distribute us.
Amazing.
And that for me was so important because we're trying so hard to do all Palestinian everything. But unfortunately, we're still waiting on our funding for filming. So we have
that's just a small detail.
So we have all of post-production paid for. We have all accessibility features paid for. We have distribution ready to go, and we don't have one red cent to film. And so that's what I'm doing right now, because I was self-funding the film. And I self-funded my web series. I self-funded the typing of my book. Like, I self-fund everything because comedy is a baller game. Unfortunately, I got decimated and I could no longer self-fund it. So for the first time in my life, I'm looking for funding, and nobody wants to put money in Palestine. So it's either A, they're afraid to invest here because of the backlash with the anti-Palestinian discrimination, or B, they're afraid to invest here because they don't really believe it can be done. So like a lot of what I do when I'm here is like I film stuff. I introduce them to our actors. We are ready to go. Like, we're ready to go. And we still have 4 months, and I believe it can happen. So we believe that we can employ 60 people with salaries that will last them for a year. And that's why we want to do it now. That's why we want to do May. But if it ends up being September, that's fine too.
So are there any other projects? Like, are you still doing the disco?
Yeah. So the disco is a panel show like The View. I call it The View after a really bad accident. And our goal was to be on a streaming service. So we shot a pilot for Amazon, but of course they passed. So I decided to take it live. And we are debuting the disco at Joe's Pub, which is the home that took in me and Dean after the club kicked us out. And it's February 20th. And each one of our live experiences will have different co-hosts, except for me, and a different theme. So February, we're doing love, marriage, relationships, sex, and disability. And then in June, we're doing LGBTQ. And then in September, I'm going to do a youth one with like teenagers that have disabilities. And then in November, invisible disabilities. And it starts with a 5-minute monologue, me being like, John Oliver, or like, Jon Stewart, talking about what we're going to talk about. And then there's a 40-minute conversation with the ladies, and then 10-minute Q&A with the audience. And we're going to film it all, and I'm going to chop it up. Each show will be 10 episodes that I then stream online, called Disco.
Nice.
And it's called...
So we'll all be able to watch it.
Yeah, and it's called Disco because it's the initials, Disability Community Disco.
Nice. Is there anything else that you're working or hoping to work on?
Let's see. So Shiny Misfits Book 2, we're really super excited about. Disco is my big live project. Vegetarian is my film project. I'll be in the Middle East teaching messaging. I am back on tour after being blacklisted. I booked all my own shows. So I'm going to be in Texas. I'm going to be in North Carolina. I'm going to be in Qatar. So I'm going to be all over the globe, God willing, in 2025.
That's so nice.
But Afaf, I want to say the last thing I want to say. I wouldn't do this podcast. I wouldn't have any of these conversations if I didn't really, truly, truly believe that there is hope. I believe that there is hope. I don't believe that this is the end. I really don't. I think that we can rebuild Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, the Arab world to be what it was. And what it was before colonialism destroyed it was we were thinkers, we were scientists, we were poets, and we are still that now. Against all odds, our art, our writings, our culture, our existence, our resistance is extraordinarily beautiful. And I have immense hope for it. And I really, really pray that not a single child, not one more is killed. I know that as we speak, it's happening, but I just pray to God that we can stop, stop.
We just want the genocide to stop, the killing to just stop. And that's, what you said, that's, again, I've said it before, but that's the aim of Tarwida, is to preserve and promote our culture, because there is a cultural genocide. And it's so important that we, uplift and amplify our voices, and whoever's working in the field of arts and culture.
And people can follow me on social media, on YouTube. I have an amazing website. It's Maysoon, just my name, Maysoon.com. Unfortunately, the day I arrived in Palestine, my web designer tore it down and destroyed it, even though I had paid him thousands of dollars.
Okay,
So,
well,
yeah.
well,
Zionism is everywhere, my love. Zionism is everywhere.
We have a couple of questions from our followers.
Okay.
Who do you consider the funniest person ever?
Sammy K. Abed.
Okay. And also, what would you advise young Arab girls with disabilities on how to overcome bullying?
Okay. First of all, study your disability. Know everything about it and learn how to live with it. Make the disability part of who you are instead of something you're battling and constantly fighting. You cannot let people define you. If someone is bullying you, you don't need to respond. You don't need to take in what they're saying. You can just ignore them. It becomes much harder when the bully is in your family. So what I say to that is, you can constantly cheer for yourself. Figure out who's the person that you want to be. What do you love about yourself? What are all the things you can do? Don't focus on what you can't do. Don't focus on people who hate you and the rhetoric that's coming out of their mouth. Someone who bullies you doesn't love you. They don't care for you. They don't want to empower you. Listen to those of us who love. Listen to those of us who empower. Don't listen to the people who tear you down. And I am here to say I understand how hard it is when they're inside your house. But eventually, you'll be able to get away from it.
And the second part of that question is also how to advocate for more inclusivity in our day-to-day lives.
Think about it when you plan your next birthday party. Are there stairs? Or is that an elevator? Do you look around your circle of friends and wonder why you don't have any deaf friends? It's your job to make friends who are different abilities, whether it's a wheelchair user, a deaf person, or a blind person, or someone like me, and to create spaces that are inclusive. So if you're planning an event, make sure it's in a space that's accessible. If you're making a play, have a night where there's ASL interpreters. It's our job to create spaces that are inclusive instead of what we're doing now, which is if there's a request, we backpedal and try and figure out how to get them in the door.
Right. Maysoon, I know that you said that you have hope, even though things feel so bleak right now. If we were to look forward maybe 5 years, where do you see yourself and what do you see yourself doing?
Habibti, I don't know. I'm just looking at tomorrow. 10 years from now, I think I will be the president of Palestine. I do. I do. I absolutely unequivocally think that I'm going to run this town. I believe it because I'm thinking hard about it. 5 years from now, I hope. Oh my God, can I say something weirdly shallow?
Everything, anything.
I think 5 years from now, I'm probably going to be in like a stellar relationship with a guy with a lot of money and kids who love me and as a stepmom so that I don't remain childless. And I think probably his wife is dead and that she wanted him to be happy because I don't want to deal with someone who's divorced. And I know I'm supposed to say something like, I'm going to host my own talk show or I'm going to be producing 6 movies a year in Medellin. But the genocide just makes me squishy and I kind of just want to end up with a really rich guy and some kids.
I I love how you fleshed out the whole scenario. You made his ex-wife dead. And not divorced so that she doesn't get angry.
No, because I want the kids to say, we just want daddy to be happy. And I don't want the ones who are like, you're not my mom. He loves her. But imagine with all I've done in the world, how shallow and simple I am. I'm just like, I just kind of want a guy to carry me up the stairs because I'm really tired.
It's been exhausting. It's been exhausting. But power to you, Maysoon, because you think a lot and you're doing a lot, even with all the restrictions and the cancellations.
Let's do a show in Greece, inshallah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yalla. So here is how I end all my comedy routines. And I would like to end my time with you with this. Okay. The world is broken, but we can fix it. We can fix it by saying no to arming violence worldwide and saying no to violence against women. We can fix it by not being an internet troll and not raising an internet troll. And we can fix it by not being silent. Your voice is your weapon against injustice. I beg you, use it. My name is Maysoon Zayid. Next year in Jerusalem, inshallah.
Thank you, Maysoon. Thank you for listening to Tarwida, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the best of Palestinian arts and culture. For more information, please follow us on social media and don't forget to subscribe. Salam.